Hello and happy Tuesday, which is my book reviews day, and today I would like to talk to you about Seven Shades of Evil, Stories from Matthew Corbett's World by Robert McCammon. Now this is the 9th release featuring Matthew Corbett, but if you haven't read the previous 8 releases, fret not, because the short stories within this collection are independent of the storyline of the series and can be read at any time, really. There's only some slight minor spoilers in the final story, but I'll get more on that in a bit. If you're not familiar with Robert McCammon or Matthew Corbett, you should definitely check both of them out, like right after this video. Robert McCammon is a legend in his own right. He made a huge name for himself as a horror author, predominantly in the 80s, but he's gone on to write one of the best coming-of-age novels with Boy's Life. And in recent years, he's been writing the Matthew Corbett series, which has been described as early American James Bond. So it takes place at the turn of the 18th century, and it follows Matthew Corbett, who is a colonial problem solver. He is hired, whether it be to track down a fugitive, to track down a serial killer, to solve a murder, to do any sort of problem that comes his way, or to solve an attempted murder, perhaps. Matthew Corbett will be on the case. And just like all of McCammon's other works, the Matthew Corbett stories and novels are incredibly well written, and they're just top-notch. So anyways, this is, like I said, the 9th release. There is still one more novel, Leviathan, which is yet to be published. But here in Seven Shades of Evil, we actually have 8 short stories. So you have 7 short stories and then a bonus short story. This has been published by Lividian Publications. This particular copy is signed, and but the limited edition still to be released. But it's coming very soon. But more on those production details in a minute. Seven Shades of Evil actually takes place, each of the short stories takes place at different periods throughout the course of the previous 8 novels. So like I said, you don't technically need to have read the other novels to enjoy these short stories. They can be read individually. Although, if you haven't read the novels, you should definitely go out and read those as well. Starting with Speaks the Nightbird, the first one, work your way up, because they are 5-star reads through and through. So here we have the 8 short stories, which I'm going to kind of go through and kind of talk a little bit about each one. Starting with The Four Lamplighters. Now, each of the short stories in this collection are really good, but if there had to be one that was my least favorite, it's unfortunately going to be the very first one here with The Four Lamplighters. It's not a bad short story. It seemed a little too goofy for Matthew Corbett's world, to me at least. Now, Robert McCammon is a very funny guy. He can write humor very well. These novels aren't necessarily humor novels, but they have their moments of humor within them. The Four Lamplighters brings us Matthew Corbett's version of the Beatles. And Matthew Corbett and Hudson Greathouse, his partner, his co-worker in the Herald Agency, are hired to figure out and protect the lives of these 4 lamplighters. Your like I said, your Beatles, for your early 1702 Beatles. And there's a lot of Beatles references in there. I mean, not to spoil anything, you got the very last lines. Imagine that, you know. You got little Beatles nods. And it's all right. It's not a bad short story. It's not as thrilling as the other ones are in the collection. So unfortunately, if that's the first one and you're kind of thrown off by the first read, continue onwards. The other ones get even better. But like I said, it's not a bad short story by any means. Speaking of Robert McCammon and his type of humor, I should have mentioned that if you don't think he's a funny guy, you should check out his music video from My Creations. The man, in addition to his writing career, has started a rap career a few years back. Just goes to show you, he's got a great sense of humor. Night Ride, the second short story in the collection here, is actually one of 2 previously published or previously released short stories. This one is a Matthew Corbett solo affair in which he is hired to, well, go on a night ride. There is a very mysterious patron who hires his services to ride throughout the night to deliver a message to a very strange and kind of spooky individual who is ways away in the country, out in the middle of nowhere. It kind of brings in some supernatural elements that you can expect from Robert McCammon. It makes her a very good read. House at the Edge of the World is actually one of the ones featured here on Vincent Chong's cover artwork. So there's no interior illustrations other than the little illustration of Corbett on his night ride, but you do get a couple little images on Vincent Chong's cover artwork, which includes this little sloth-looking dude who is actually from this character, the House at the Edge of the House at the Edge of the World. You're also going to get the Skeleton Crew and Wandering Mary on the cover there. More on them in a second. So House at the Edge of the World doesn't actually feature Matthew at all. This is a Hudson Greathouse short story, and that's where the kind of key distinction is about these being from Matthew Corbett's world. Not all the short stories are going to follow Matthew Corbett. The novels themselves follow Corbett, but these short stories actually highlight a lot of the other characters from Matthew Corbett's world. So Hudson Greathouse has his time to shine here at the House at the Edge of the World, where he has to go up against not necessarily supernatural forces, but some strange creatures in the night. Next up, we have The Scorpion's Eye. I believe that's the next one. Yep, The Scorpion's Eye, which follows and centers on Minx Cutter, another character from Matthew Corbett's world who's introduced in Providence Rider, the fourth book. This is her own solo tale, which is a little bit of a heist tale as she tries to get the titular Scorpion's Eye. You get a little bit of thrilling intrigue and heist in there. Skeleton Crew takes you even further away from the main cast, and this is actually a story for Catherine Harold of the Herald Agency herself, her time to shine, as she is hired to protect an African-American woman from a supernatural-seeming skeleton crew that is tormenting people at night in her area. Like I said, you got a little Skeleton Crew on the cover there with Vincent Chong's artwork. It's a good tale, and it ends with a thrilling card game, which you don't necessarily associate card games with high thrills, but I mean, Casino Royale pulled it off, and McCammon pulls it off here as well. The Pale Pipe Smoker, oh, you know what? This is not featured in Vincent Chong's artwork, but the Pale Pipe Smoker is featured in the photo that Robert McCammon has done for his author photo, right there. So that is him as the Pale Pipe Smoker. This is the second of the previously released short stories, in which Catherine Harold and Minx Cutter, teaming up for this job, are hired to kind of approach this Pale Pipe Smoker who has been showing up at one of the New York taverns night after night and really weirding out the locals. But it turns out that there is more to the Pale Pipe Smoker's quest than what they otherwise seem, and they become involved in the Pale Pipe Smoker's quest. Also, fun enough, another good reference to the Beatles in this one, in that Billy Shears is a prominent character in the Pale Pipe Smoker. Then we get to the largest short story. We're about halfway through, a little over halfway through the volume here, and there's actually only two stories left. One is the massive novella-length Wandering Mary, which is probably the highlight of this collection, in my opinion. It's a good chunk of pages there. This, once again, brings us back to Matthew Corbett himself, where he is hired to investigate a ghost sighting. There is a bit of family tragedy in this well-to-do family, and the family, or one of the members of the family, claims to see the ghost of his dead wife, who they're referring to as Wandering Mary, and Wandering Mary is beckoning him to commit suicide to join her in death. And wow, it's a great short story. Like, if you love the Matthew Corbett novels, you're going to love Wandering Mary. It feels like a classic Matthew Corbett novel in and of itself, and makes it worth the price of admission for the whole short story collection. You have a little bit of supernatural elements, but whether or not they're actually supernatural elements, you'll have to decide for yourself through the course of reading it. Finally, once you get past that seventh short story, you are greeted with a little blurb here talking about how you got a little bonus short story, an eighth short story, which is Incident on the Lady Barbara. This is one that actually follows Barry Grigsby, Matthew Corbett's love interest, as she sails back from England and deals with a very disgruntled and disreputable character on the Lady Barbara. And it turns out that there's more afoot than what seems to be presented to her, as she's kind of dragged in to a bit of intrigue and a little bit of theft, a little bit of murder, just a tad bit of murder, to close things out. If you haven't read, as I was saying earlier, there was, I guess, a slight spoiler in terms of the Lady Barbara. If you haven't read the other novels, then you wanted to start with Seven Shades of Evil, you absolutely can. Each of these short stories is self-contained. You might not have the great backstory into the characters that you would get from reading the novels, but Robert McCammon does an excellent job of introducing what you need to know within each short story. And having read these short stories before the novels isn't going to do any disservice. You can certainly get enjoyment, and it might even be preferable if you're a little wary about diving into a large novel like Speaks the Nightbird, which is the first volume. Maybe the short stories is the perfect place to start, because it gives you a little taste of McCammon's style, gives you a taste of the characters and what to expect in the world of Matthew Corbett. But if you do that, you might want to refrain from reading The Incident on the Lady Barbara, the 8th short story. Not that it contains spoilers to the storyline of the other 8 novels, soon to be 9 novels with Leviathan, but it does have some minor spoilers in terms of where they are. As I mentioned, they're in England at the start of this, heading back, and it kind of explains, it doesn't explain why they're in England, but might be a little bit of spoiler in terms of what Matthew's current client and job is within the realm of the series, which wouldn't make sense to you if you haven't read the novels, but if you love it, you're going to want to go read the novels, and that might be a little spoiler for you. So avoid the 8th one, at least until you've caught up, or at least until you've gotten past Cardinal Black, which is the one that story follows. Seven Shades of Evil is one hell of a read. If you have read Matthew Corbett short stories and novels and you're itching for more, you should definitely pick up a copy. The trade edition was released from Lividian Publications. They're also doing the signed and numbered edition. The signed and numbered edition is sold out. It is going to be shipping in just a few weeks, or shipping very soon. So you might see copies pop up on the secondary market. If you haven't read the novels, the first 2 novels, Speaks the Nightbird and Queen of Bedlam, should be readily available wherever books are sold. The following volumes have all gotten small press treatments, but thankfully, Lividian Publications here is ready to help you out with acquiring those other volumes. So starting with book 3 up until Seven Shades of Evil, Lividian got publishing rights and published all of the titles as trade editions. So starting with Mr. Slaughter, going all the way up to The King of Shadows, which is book number 8. You can get those in trade paperbacks from Lividian Publications. If you're not necessarily looking for a signed numbered copy, maybe you want a signed trade copy, such as this copy signed by Robert McCammon, then you should actually check out Alabama Booksmith. There we go, alabamabooksmith.com. They actually have a bunch of signed copies over there, including a bunch of signed McCammon titles. So you can actually pick up a copy of this and perhaps some signed copies of some other McCammon titles as well. One thing, and I will do the unboxing of the signed numbered edition once it arrives. One thing to note between the numbered edition and the trade edition, at least this was the case with The King of Shadows. I presume that this is also the case with Seven Shades of Evil. You'll notice that the font is a little smaller in the trade edition than it will be in the signed and numbered edition. The page count will be higher as well because of that. But seriously, if you haven't checked out Robert McCammon's novels, you should definitely do so. He's one of the best authors out there, in my opinion. Boy's Life is one of my favorite novels of all time, and the Matthew Corbett series is his magnum opus. If you are a McCammon fan, and I'm going to be talking about this until I have the book in my hands, Boy's Life, one of his best novels, one of my favorite novels of all time, was actually recently announced just this past week as getting a Suntup edition. So unfortunately, that edition is completely sold out already. The classic edition, which is McCammon signed everything. The classic edition, which is Simon McCammon, sold out the weekend of. The numbered edition sold out within minutes of going to the public sale. I will do an unboxing for that when I get it, but that is one you should definitely check out on the secondary market as well if you get the chance. Seriously, check out Robert McCammon. The man is a legend. Check out Matthew Corbett's novels and pick up a copy of Seven Shades of Evil, stories from Matthew Corbett's world. Even if you haven't read the novels, you can always read these short stories first to give you a little taste to see whether you like the novels. If you like the short stories, you'll like the novels. And if you're like me, you're probably going to love these short stories. So I have plenty of these book reviews on the channel. I do at least one a week, if not two, and plenty of unboxings between here and there to hold you over. So please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.